with Panzer Dragoon finding itself returning to prominence with a remake of the first title some 18 years since its last mainline release. Brought to life by Polish studio Megapixel, published by Forever Entertainment, and much like Sonic Mania and Streets of Rage 4, Sega are seemingly absent from the process. Panzer Dragoon comes as a welcome return. Running through the 6 chapters of the remake, a number of particular elements caught my eye, and the mind started ticking. I mean, it does happen occasionally. Where had I seen these before? Flying rocks? A land of dragons? These fireballs coming at me from left, right and centre. Panzer Dragoon's development is said to have been influenced by Sega AM2's 1985 release of the fast-paced super-scalar shooter Space Harrier, but might there actually be more meat on the bones than a mere influence? Might their stories also be entangled and entwined? Besides both being on appearance on-rail shooters, blasting enemies on a sweeping roller coaster, featuring spectacular grand boss battles. It's Space Harrier, stages 5 and 12 have you mounted upon a dragon. Okay, it's more of a furry one like Falcor from the Neverending Story, and in Panzer Dragoon you can opt for Space Harrier mode, which sees the protagonist flying in with just his gun. So join me in scratching the surface, as there's a few more things linking these titles together. It was the Christmas period of 1996, a taxi trip to Toys R Us resulting in the purchase of a Sega Saturn. When I loaded up that first demo disc just to check out what was on there, a blast of Sega Rally, Golden Axe the Duel, and watching a Virtua Fighter 2 video. But next up, what in the world is Panzer Dragoon 2, some German tank game? It was certainly not what I thought it would be. Here we are, we're riding a dragon through a dense forest, there's beautiful music, huge bizarre creatures, enemies, with really uniquely shaped vehicles of what appear to be levitating stones with wooden boats strapped to them. A shooter that was both unique, punchy and satisfying, depicting a slice of a world where I wanted to learn more. That's what brought me into this bleak dystopian world of dragon riders, an empire and a history of ancient machines. '96 was a time when games also came with manuals. That's right, the manual was where the lore began of any title. Not just an instruction manual, it was the stuff you read on the way home, after you got high on that new game smell. It was an enrichment layer, setting the stage for the adventure that was about to begin. The Panzer Dragoon series takes place on an unspecified world, where people are struggling to survive in tribal groups, chiseling out an existence and fighting over meagre resources and the technology of the Ancients. The Ancients is the name given to those that was once a world-spanning advanced civilization who existed thousands of years before any of the Panzer Dragoon series of titles. The Ancients, bioengineered creatures for work, for experiments, for war, as well as dragons. A grand cataclysm brought the downfall of the Ancients, humanity nearly wiped out, anchoring only a mere living in a bleak world gone awry. Many of the creatures survived, and the remnants of long-aged technologies are used as machinery, weapons and vehicles. Ships, strapped and secured to odd-shaped flying stones, are a series staple. The originally entitled Empire have collected and used weapons from this ancient age to gain dominance over the continent. They are greatly feared as they control with an iron grip, seeking and mining more ancient age tech. The developers, Team Andromeda and later Smilebit, carved a rich, lived-in universe that exists in and around the characters and you, the player. The world flies past at a blistering pace from the back of a dragon. Featuring 4 mainline titles in the series: Panzer Dragoon, Panzer Dragoon 2 in '96, Saga in '98, which happens to be one of those highly sought-after, revered titles of the 32-bit generation, commanding a large price. Auto arrived as part of the Sega initiative of reinvention to the OG Xbox, which is now also available on the Xbox Game Pass, and there's 2 side Dragon flights that exist in the form of Panzer Dragoon Mini for the Game Gear and the rather short-lived Tiger R-Zone. It was likely intentional, as the world became richer through those first 2 games, that there was a story ripe to be explored as a role-playing game in Saga. There are many resources available to bring you up to speed on the depths of this incredible world, and I'll direct you there in the description below. But as I wanted to focus and look at specific clues and elements that bring the title question into focus. So let's start stitching this potential together. Let's focus on technology, equipment, style, and definitely a touch of lore. Space Harrier was released by Sega in '85, spawned a direct sequel Space Harrier 2 in '88, and a sequel to that Planet Harriers in 2000. So running and flying across a vivid, surreal landscape full of floating stones, strange carved heads, one-eyed mammoths, serpents, technology, dragons. These titles have received a variety of varying quality conversions to home systems, and have also been included as games within games, such as in the case of Shenmue, Yakuza and Judgment. So my investigation led me to research the manuals. Ah yes, those lovely manuals. Remember now that I said it, is manuals are where you find the story before you play. So you may think, wait, there's a story to Space Harrier? A run and gun shooter with the incredible superscalar animation graphics, where the goal was to shoot everything and gain a high score? Yes. Yes, there is. And it was wrote by Mutsuharu Fuji and Yuji Naka. They enriched the game, adding in the new boss, ending and contributing the story when it went from the arcade to the home console of the Mark III Sega Master System. Unfortunately, Space Harrier is not a game that I own physically, outside of Shenmue and Yakuza. So a quick trip to the Internet Archive, Sega Retro, and some support from the Saturn Junkyard is where I went. But here's where it gets a little sticky. Sega of Japan, America and Europe, as well as the UK, put out differing depths of what they perceive as their audience, and the audience expectation of a story, especially when it comes to a shooter. What that means is we've got a few differences, some small, some major. So the plan is here is let's be brief, otherwise we've got a lot of text to digest. So whether we're talking about the manuals, whether it be for the Mark III, the Mega Drive, the 32X, the manuals of any of the original titles where these stories exist, there's one consistent factor that is written in there. That is the Land of Dragons. Dragonland, the Land of Dragons. What's happening? As Space Harrier, you must save the Land of Dragons and yourself from extinction. The Land of Dragons is so breathtakingly beautiful. Also, now flicking through the game's enemy art, like this Mark III manual, gives us some other connection points, bizarre creatures, technology, familiar in appearance to those found in Panzer Dragoon. Here in the Commodore Amiga version, it says you're the Space Harrier, one of the most experienced asteroid exterminators in the galaxy, and you're here hunting hideous super monsters. Of all the backstories and game quality, it seems Sega put a lot of emphasis on the 32X release. They included a 2-page insight into the lore. Check this out. Valda's evil forces have broken through the protective force field guarding Dragonland. The Sentinels were no match for the invading horror. We also meet Harry. He was a sentinel of the Land of the Dragons, and whilst escaping the advancing invaders, he noticed bombs had destroyed much of the terrain, yet amongst the wreckage poking through, he found a jetpack. He'd never seen anything like this one. He knew of stories of knights long ago who carried such powerful ancient machines, huge lasers mounted at the front. This equipment is ancient tech. The Ancient Age is mentioned as a time of high technology, flying machines, monsters. Are we talking about the same Ancient Age? That's Panzer Dragoon. The technology created by the ancients in the form of the Tomos and the Tetrahedron, as a means of defence, found as the same form in the tower defence systems here. Dragons rise up through the vagrant stories and balance to counter the rise of the ancient bioweapons. Now these flying heads bring up images of the cult 70s Sean Connery flick Zardoz. You know, I really shouldn't have been 10 when I saw that movie. Thrust at you, often, are flying stones, so here they are perhaps uncarved. Floating stones and their levitation properties are witnessed in the Space Harrier age, that are used to devastating cultivation, creating the highly effective vehicles used by the Empire. The technology firing at you from the Empire, whose ruthless use of ancient age technology sees fireballs and munitions, fired in wanton abandonment, seeking to take you, the rider, out as you fly bound for the remaining tower. Now, according to Panzer Dragoon's manual, there are multiple towers at one time, destroyed by an ancient war. Might they not have been destroyed by the ancient cataclysm, but by the Harrier, who encounters many on his tear across the sky? Sure, it's not known in Space Harrier if they were active or have any power, but they certainly explode, the score counter rewarding you handsomely. As it is said that the dragons have risen a number of times, might the Ancient Age, perhaps an even more ancient one, multiple rises and falls of civilizations mirroring our own. Panzer's world has weapons mounted on vehicles, strapped to floating rocks, and mounted on platforms. The cannon blaster of the Harrier has blasting similar shots as the cannon mounted here in the region of Panzer Dragoon. A braver man than many wielding a cannon dangerously under one's arm, wearing a jetpack. So could we be seeing a timeline here of the Ancient Age, ancient been a word that means indeterminate, really, deep somewhere in the annals of history. We have stories of shields and force fields being present at a time, a hostile force that has taken possession of devastating firepower, levelling a city. Bioengineered monsters, large and rampant, each territorially patrolling a region now of the Land of Dragons. Each region titled with names not that dissimilar from Panzerese, the crested language formed from influences of Greek and Japanese that exist in Panzer Dragoon. The Space Harrier then comes in with blasts and destroys the creatures. Though being bioengineered, of course, many clones can exist, resulting in them once again claiming territory in the sky as wild animals do, to sky their savannah, which is why sometime later, Space Harrier 2, Space Harrier 3D, they follow a similar series of events. The wielding up and the dusting off of that trusty cannon and pulling the trigger on the jetpack, the world now even more devastated, clearing each area and the alpha-sized boss. Maybe eons later, the mechanics and the Empire piecing together those scraps before the Empire took over entirely. Planet Harriers describing a world destroyed or a world saved by monsters let loose a millennia ago. So if we take the present tense as being Panzer Dragoon, you can then envision using our own civilization as a template, how we are a civilization with amnesia. We know that something happened in the ancient past, we know that those stories are there, but we can't quite make sense of them because they're so fragmented. In the world of Panzer, we have that. There's lots of little stories, lots of little bits that tell us that something happened in the past. By a further extension, the popular Japanese series Fantasy Zone also shares a connection with Space Harrier. Both series have been thought for quite some time to be in the same universe too. The opening of Space Harrier, of course, is the
"Welcome to the Fantasy Zone. Get ready."
The reciprocal handshake followed up in 1989 with the release of Fantasy Zone for the Japan-exclusive Sharp X68000 console containing a secret stage entitled Dragonland that features Space Harrier enemy characters. The director of Fantasy Zone being one Yoji Ishii, the producer of Panzer Dragoon. So thinking of it that way, maybe there's 3 titles that are in this shared universe. I'm DefineKristian, and I'll see you soon.